Hello, BookTube. Well, it's a bleak and barren Sunday, and for those of you who might be new to the channel, that means no books in the mail for Steve. So I thought I would console myself with a tag, and I found one. It's fairly long, so I'm going to try and march my way through it. It's the I Dare You book tag, which I think I saw first on Pierre Ford's channel. I'm not really sure if that's the first time I've seen it. I don't know if she made it or not. I'll look into it and I'll leave the notations. And it has three rules. Rule number one is that you must be honest. Rule number two is that you must answer all the questions. And rule number three is that you must tag at least four people. And I think I can handle those. Although some of the questions make you must answer all the questions a little difficult. But anyway, we'll get to that. So, question number one: what book has been on your shelf the longest? This is one of those questions where I've looked around the place and I'm not really sure, because my book collection is in such an incredibly fluid state at all times. I've got tons of stuff coming in and going out, and always have. I have a feeling that the books that have been with me the longest are in a small collection of 17 titles that I'll get to later on. Actually, that small collection of 17 titles is going to crop up a couple of times in here. So I'll kick this one down the road for a bit. Question number two: what is your current read, your last read, and your next read? I want to smush these together a little because I typically don't have a current read. Usually I'm not in a position to tell you I am currently reading X, because when I start it, I then read it until I finish it. So it becomes the book I just read. So instead of that, I don't have a book that I'm in the middle of now. So what I'm going to do is I'll give you two of my most recent ones and my next one. And the two most recent ones, the first one is this, Earthly Remains by Donna Leone. This is the 27th, I think, adventure of her Commissario Brunetti series, or a series about a happily married Venetian policeman. And I loved it, this latest one. I have a soft spot for this series. I think it's wonderfully done. One of the most consistently pleasing performances in series mysteries. And then another most recent one I read right before that was a very different emotion reaction, infuriating, and that was this, Old Earth or Evolutionary Creationism. This is a collection of religious agitprop that comes out in the summer. It's entirely written by non-scientists, and it's got something infuriating on every page. Even though atheists often co-opt Darwin's theory in support of their own worldview, it is of course conceivable that God could have used evolutionary processes to create. And you can encounter something like that on virtually every page, something that is absolutely untrue, and that the writer, knowing scripture, has to know is untrue. It is not possible that God uses, that if you're a creationist, a Christian creationist, then it's not possible that God uses evolutionary processes to create, because you've been told already that he created all life out of nothing. Not out of previous life, out of nothing. So if you're a creationist Christian, lions started off as lions. There's no such thing as a proto-lion. There are no extinct species of lion. There are no animals that are part lion and that are going to become all lion later on, millions and millions of years later. There's nothing like that. And yet there is. So the two don't go together. You might as well say it. They're in direct opposition to each other. But I will find a venue to tear that to pieces when the time comes. And then the book I'm reading next is one we've seen on this channel before. It's Freud's Trip to Orvieto, in which the writer analyzes Freud's reaction to Renaissance frescoes that he saw and had an odd reaction to. So I can't wait to read it. It struck all the right chimes with me. Question number three: what book did everyone like but you hated? This happens a lot with me, especially when it comes to contemporary fiction, where contemporary fiction is prone to bandwagon jumping. And I read this stuff. I read everything. I go into everything as much as I can with a completely open mind and just rifle through it, just sift it for its own weight. And so I get to a book like Homegoing, and I think, what are the rest of you possibly seeing in this junk? And of course, in modern times, the example of that is Harry Potter. The Harry Potter novels, which are, just self-evidently moronic. There's no characterization, there's no plot, there's no sequence, there's no foreplanning, there's no nothing. It's just one thing after another, pasted all together. The work, the apologetical work that fans have done to make a coherent whole out of the world universe of the Harry Potter books ought to earn them a medal, but it certainly doesn't reflect well on the books. Although, as I've said before on this channel, when it comes to the Harry Potter books, I'm still immensely grateful, even though I think they're garbage. I'm still immensely grateful for the effect they've had on their readers, many of whom have gone on to love reading. J.K. Rowling has kindled a true love of reading in more people than anybody this side of Dr. Seuss. So I'm hats off to her for that, no matter what I think of the series. Question number 4. What book do you keep telling yourself you will read but probably won't? None. Question number 5. What book are you saving for retirement? None. Question number 6. Last page. Read it first or wait till the end? I read a lot of nonfiction. This tag, like many BookTube tags, doesn't even seem aware of the fact that nonfiction exists. But even with fiction, I don't go and read the last page. There's more to reading than the last page surprise. I know that a lot of you know that, but I think also a lot of you maybe don't, and it's certainly the writer of this tag did not, and so I thought I would stick up for that. There's more to a book than whether or not it gets you in the last page before it leads you on to the next book in the inevitable trilogy. But anyway, I don't read the last page ever until I get to it. Question number 7. Acknowledgements, a waste of paper, or an interesting aside? I usually find them interesting, unless they're overdone. If a 150-page collection of mediocre, interconnected short stories has a 6-page acknowledgement section, well, that's a little bit of a joke, and that infuriates me. But otherwise, no. I like to see, for instance, how many writers of modern fiction are praising or acknowledging their writing group, the local writing group that they're a part of. I always like seeing that. That's always interesting. And I, of course, love it when I myself make it into the book's acknowledgement. Question number 8. Which book character would you trade places with? We've been over this on this channel before. None. For the simple reason that a book character is a character in a book, and I am not. The one is clearly a lesser satisfying existence than the other. So I'm... question number 9. Name a book that reminds you of a specific time in your life. This is one of those impossibly general questions that I think is the reason why we're made to promise that we're going to answer all the questions, because otherwise you'd just punt this. Every book reminds you of something specific in your life. But in my case, it connects with the books that I've already mentioned in the first question, a certain core of 17 books that I'll get to in just a question or two. Question number 10. A book that you acquired in an interesting way. I've acquired a number of books in interesting ways over the course of my life. In one particular instance that comes to mind, I saw a bookish person being bullied, being bullied by a little cadre of thugs, basically. And I stepped in, and he was so grateful for what seemed like nothing to me that he wanted to give me something, but he was as poor as a church mouse, and he had a book that he treasured. And he said, "I'm giving this to you because I treasure it." So I seemed like an insult not to take it, so I did. Question number 11. Have you ever given a book away for a special reason to a special person? Many, many times. This is another one of those questions where you could, of course you're going to want to pass on it because it's too big. One example that comes to mind is my sainted Ma. When she was alive, she had... among many, many, many other irrationalities, she was irrationally afraid of bees. And so whenever I had an occasion, I would give her a book like The Secret Life of Bees or The Beekeeper's Daughter or something like that, just to poke fun at her irrational fear. And she was always sarcastic about that, but because it was a gift from her son, she always left it out on her coffee table. So if you'd gone into that room, you would have thought you were in the apartment of a bee fancier. Let's see here. Question number 12. Which book has been with you to the most places? And this we get back to... This is my answer to a number of these questions. There were 17 Penguin paperbacks, Penguin mass markets. that I traveled with, and I never varied them. I didn't go to bookstores when I was traveling. I bought as little as I possibly could when I was traveling. I traveled very light, and I had a Foot Locker, and I would make these Penguin mass markets into a mosaic second floor to the Foot Locker, so they weren't rattling around. I would just pile everything on top of them. And those Penguin Classics went with me everywhere. And I still have most of them. And they're with my Penguin Classics. They have a place of honor. And I actually wrote a little piece about them. I'll try and remember to link it down below to give you more detail in case you want it. Let's see here. Question number 13. Any required reading you hated in high school, but that wasn't so bad 2 years later? There's another indication of the youth of the person who wrote this tag. Since I went to high school 1,378 years ago, and 2 years after that would have been 1,376 years ago. So there hasn't been any real change in the needle since then. But I do understand the question. When you have required reading in high school, the fact that you have a gun to your head and that everybody's doing it and that everybody's complaining about it could soil almost any reading experience. And I always hope that the bookishly inclined high school students are going to go back and reread all of the books they read at gunpoint when they were in high school, because a lot of them will have more merit than you would ever have seen when you were being force-marched through it. I always hope they do, no matter what the book is. Question number 14, used or brand new? Of course, aside from today, Sunday, when the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston is not open and when there are no books in the mail, aside from today, I relish both. I see and get a lot of used books in the course of a week, and I get a lot of new books in the mail. The one thing I think the question is probably angling towards that I do almost never, is go into a retail bookstore and buy a book at full price. That almost never happens. But new books and used books, I love them both. Question number 15, have you ever read a Dan Brown book? I have. I read Digital Fortress and kind of sort of liked it. And then I read The Da Vinci Code and thought it was one of the dumbest things I'd ever read in my life. It didn't even read like an outline. It read like thoughts on an outline. And then I read Inferno. And I finished it and thought, wow, you read a whole book about a literary masterpiece you obviously don't understand at all. There was something kind of impressive about that. I doubt that I will read any more Dan Brown. Question number 16, have you ever seen a movie that you liked more than the book? And those of you who've been watching this channel for any length of time will know that that happens to me all the time. I am not one of these people that just reflexively thinks that the book is always better. And I jotted down some recent examples from, I think, last year, all of them from last year. There was the new Ben-Hur, the new movie of Ben-Hur. I don't know how many of you saw it or how widely distributed it was, but it was visually amazing. It was visually an incredible feat, and certainly more entertaining and gripping than Lew Wallace's book. There was American Pastoral. Ewan McGregor, I think, adapted American Pastoral, and it was fantastic. The movie was really, really good. Certainly better than the sludge pile of the book. A Monster Calls, a great movie that was adapted from Patrick Ness's less than great book. The Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, the horror trick of interpolating zombies into Pride and Prejudice on the page wears thin after about 10 pages. But the movie had unbelievable amounts of energy and some absolutely razor-sharp performances. I loved it from beginning to end. Me Before You, Jojo Moyes. The movie was actually touching and extremely well done, whereas the book it's telegraphically manipulative. It's just you can't possibly read it without thinking, oh, this author is having her way with me, and in fairly ham-handed gestures too. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I could go on and on. Question number 17: have you ever read a book that made you hungry? No, I have not. Have you? Does that happen? Is that a thing? Question number 18: whose book advice will you always take? I don't really know if I have a standard answer to this one. I read everything without asking anybody. I don't go to anybody and say, hey, I need a book on World War II. You know, what's good? I decide what's good for myself. But what a pattern that I have fallen into over the decades is to then check my reactions to what I read against people I know who are experts in that thing. So I have an old friend who's an expert in the American Revolution. If I read a new book about, you know, morale among the Redcoats or the Boston Massacre or anything, if I know that he has read it, I will go to him and say, you know, what did you think? And if he says that it was really good and I thought it wasn't, then I'll go back and revisit. Same thing with contemporary fiction. I have a friend who reviews contemporary fiction, and it's all he reads, and he's really good at it, much better at it than I am. So if I read a contemporary novel and think there's not much to it, and he says otherwise, I will very often revisit that novel, usually to my benefit. So it's not really that I go to people ahead of time. I accept second opinions from lots of people that I know. Question number 19. This is the last one. A book outside of your comfort zone that you ended up loving. This happens to me quite a bit. I try to constantly expand my comfort zone. In the last year or so, it has happened most intensely with books about quantum physics, which is well outside my comfort zone, even now. I don't know how much I've read about it, but which brings out the best in a lot of the people who write about it. So I gravitate to those books, even though a lot of their conclusions and contentions make me very uncomfortable. And that's it. That is the I Dare You book tag. All that's left is for me to tag 4 people. And I could tag 400 people with questions like this. They're so good. So I just, off the top of my head, I want to tag these 4 people. I want to tag Adam from Memento Mori. I want to tag Richard Bruna. Rich, I want to hear your answers to this. I want to tag Britta. And I want to tag Jennifer from Insert Literary Pun here to do the I Dare You book tag, which has indeed perked up my bleak and barren Sunday. So I'm going to wrap it up for now. I've got to take a certain someone outside. But I'll see you soon, BookTube, hopefully with books in hand. Thank you.